Thanks for joining CBC Rewind, where we sit down with Pastor Gary as he dives deeper into his sermon.
All right, CBC, thank you for tuning in today. We're back with Pastor Gary today after a week off. And so how are you today?
You know what? I'm doing pretty good. It's raining outside, but I'm feeling it.
Yeah, it's pretty rainy.
In here, it feels good.
So today we're going to be discussing last week's sermon entitled Hot Coals Part 2.
Yep.
And so let's just jump right into it.
All right.
You talked about leaving room for God to do work in your life, or leaving room for God to do his job, basically. So would you say that stepping back should be the first step, just always, whenever pressed with like a new situation or a possibly difficult situation?
I think overall, we are some more than others, we are a product of our environment, okay? Or you might even say we're a product of our culture, or we're a product of the culture that we've actually created for our own life. And each of our lives have a pace to them. You know, some of that pace is driven by personality. Some of that pace is driven by responsibilities or our vocation, whatever the case may be. But oftentimes, if we're not careful, we find ourselves like dragging God through life as opposed to him leading us. And I think sometimes busyness is a real thing in our culture that keeps us from kind of hearing, settling in, kind of putting a plan together to deal with things. And we find ourselves, like oftentimes with the best of intentions, messing up situations because we're just talking out of our flesh or talking off the top of our head, as opposed to having, not every time, but more often than not, some sort of idea about how the Lord wants to handle this situation with you. And that's what I mean by leaving room. Leave room for him to speak, which it's much easier to hear him, by the way, when you're not talking. Mm-hmm. Okay. Leave room for him to lead you, and it's oftentimes much more clear when you're not moving yourself. Be still and know that I am God, as Psalmist says. So these things are important, and not only important, I'd say imperative, if we really want to walk in maturity and fullness to handle challenges, crises, even to celebrate things where we end up being much more proactive than reactive, and we really understand that we're settled in with, and Christ isn't off somewhere, he's within us. Christ in us, the hope of glory. Let's listen, let's think biblically, and then let's act. Mm-hmm. That's my point there.
Yeah. All right. So you mentioned your favorite verse being 1 Thessalonians 4:11, which reads, "Make it your ambition to leave a quiet life. You should mind your own business and work with your hands just as we told you, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders and so that you will not be dependent on anybody." And so my question is, what is the line between caring for someone and being in someone's business?
Okay. Well, let's look at that verse. Make it your ambition. Okay. Do you know of anybody who would use the word ambition to describe their quest to live a quiet and peaceful life and mind their own business? It's kind of unheard of. Yeah. So that's why that verse sticks out to me. It's one of my favorite, probably not my single favorite verse, but make it your ambition to live a quiet and peaceful life. Oftentimes we're not quiet and we're not peaceful because, to be honest with you, we need attention. We need affirmation. We need validation. We need to be heard. We need to have a voice. We need to make a difference. We need. And a quiet and peaceful life really isn't based on need. It's based on abundance. So we don't live a quiet and peaceful life and make it our ambition to do so out of our deficit of peace or a deficit of Christ. We live with ambition to live that way out of our abundance of Christ. So I'd much rather you interact with me out of your abundance in Christ instead of your need and deficiency of him, okay? That way we can mind our own business. Oftentimes people get into other people's business because it meets a deficit in their life. It's not the best thing to do. All right, what deficit does it meet? I need to feel important. I need to feel wise. I need to feel helpful. So oftentimes we impose ourselves upon someone else to meet a personal need, when our personal need needs to be secondary to what is we're trying to help somebody. Okay, so we judge them, or we correct them, or we teach them. Well, we don't always need to teach people. We don't always need to counsel people. We have to make sure that our motivation to do those things is not out of a deficit that we have that makes us complete, but it's meeting a deficiency that someone else has, and it's willingly received. Okay, people have to be humble and teachable before we go around, teaching lessons and telling people how to live. And I think Paul, writing to the church at Thessalonica, knew that they had a problem with idols, and everyone had to sort it out on their own, so to speak. Like, how am I going to live my life, and where do these idols come into play? And he's realizing, sometimes we need to. In a previous question, we said on a personal level, leave room for God to work in our life. Now that verse to me kind of says, let's leave room for God to work in other people's lives, right? I'd much rather they learn directly from God than from me, because I think their retentions and their response is going to be so much different than if I come in and insert myself into a situation. So I think it's sometimes, even when you're going to try to help somebody, it's nice to know that they have a willingness for you to do so. Okay. For instance, I'll give you an example. Let's say that someone needs prayer for healing. It's a lot better for me to say, would you mind if I laid my hand on your shoulder? As opposed to just barging in there. You see what I'm saying? We have to respect people where they are and know where our business ends and their business with God begins. And because we want that reciprocated in our life, we don't want to be the person who tells everybody in the family how to live, and then when you get together for Christmas, you bicker the whole time because you didn't shut up all year. Make it your ambition to live a quiet and peaceful life. Give room for God to work in your life and in the lives of other people, and hope that that's reciprocated back. That was actually, I just preached a sermon on that. Like in that very moment. All I did, did you notice that? Yeah. I noticed it about halfway through. Did I get into your business on that?
Oh, no, you're good.
Okay.
You're good. All right.
Hey, listen, I wonder how much of my business is to get into your business.
Yeah, good.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a good question. I had different answers, I'm sure.
You stated that if you're not prepared early in your day to have and meet the demands of what God brings your way later in the day, then you are ill-prepared, and it makes it not possible to have peace. So are you saying that peace comes from preparedness? Yeah,
this is a principle, like it's all over the Bible, but people typically don't see it. It's right there in front of them, but they don't see it. And I include myself. All right, the whole Old Testament, look at it through the lens that it's a preparation. So what is it? Well, it's actually an outline. What do you mean an outline? It's an outline of what's going to happen in the New Testament. In fact, when you read the New Testament, you actually realize how much of the Old Testament you're reading. The Old Testament is a preparation, an outline of preparing the ministry of Jesus. It says where he's going to be born, how he's going to live, how he's going to die, and basically everything in between, who he's going to heal, how he's going to heal. So that's a prepared strategic plan is already put in place 400 years before Christ ever is incarnate on earth and born in Bethlehem. All right, that's preparedness. Mm-hmm. As if that's not enough, the principle continues. John the Baptist has a ministry of what? Preparation. He prepares the way of the Lord. So not only the Old Testament, but him, John the Baptist, is a transition between the Old and the New Testaments, who's now preparing the way for Christ, telling people he's coming. Get ready, here he comes. Then Christ comes, and he prepares for 30 years. Think about that, for his public ministry. And then has to prepare his disciples for their next 3 years of training and their ministry in his physical absence. So what do the disciples do 10 days before Pentecost? They have 10 days of prayer and preparation for what? The 50th day. So the principle here is that preparation is of a huge importance, and the depth of that preparation will determine the width and the scope of the impact that your ministry is going to have. Okay? Mm-hmm. All right, so what does that mean in everyday life? So let's stop talking about preachers and visionaries for a second. Let's say two parents start studying and adopting a philosophy to parent their child while the child's in the womb. That's preparedness. What if in your younger days, your parents teach you how to handle money and you start practicing those biblical financial principles early in life to prepare you for later in life? You prepare a college fund for your grandchild. You're fiscally fit now because of the preparation you took earlier. You stayed out of debt. You did this. You did that. You did things early in your marriage that assured you of a fruitfulness later in marriage. So yes, preparation and peace are oftentimes walking the same road. Conversely, the absence of preparation, more often than not, leads to anxiety. Preparation gives you a better idea what the future is going to look like. Anxiety is a fear of what the future is going to look like. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that anxiety is mitigated by or diminished by is preparation. Usually people that live in a reactive life have anxiety. People live in a proactive life have peace. Anyway, it's just something to think about. If you lack preparedness in different areas of your life, you'll see more of a presence of worry and anxiety than you would well-preparedness and wisdom. Mm-hmm. So take you, which I like to do, because you're the only one sitting here. You prepared yourself with a college degree, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. You prepared yourself, and you were prepared early on in your life for where you are now. So where you are now is probably a better place because of the preparation. You ever seen an NFL football team take the field for the first time in the first game? No, they went through 2-a-day practices on the field, right? Yeah. So, life is that way.
All right. So, last thing I have for you is, this upcoming Sunday will be the last sermon in this series, the Holy Fire series. And so it's going to be entitled Hot Coals Part 3, right?
Hot Coals Part 3,
So what can we be expecting in that?
John 21:9, Jesus takes, first of all, I want to accentuate this Sunday how specific and personal Jesus Christ is with each and every one of us, okay? And that's a good thing. The not so good thing is that we assume that he treats us all the same. All right? Mm-hmm. So he specifically has a strategy and a way of ministering to you where you are right now. If I want to minister to you, I'd be well served and I'd serve you much better if I knew how he was operating in your life and where you are, as opposed to treating you like every other person in the church. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like we interact with people, we want to minister to them, but we come in the middle of the movie and we have no idea where they've been, what they believe, to what extent, what their practices are, how they know the Lord. And we need to know those things so that we can best meet their needs in Christ. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be in part what this message is about. It's also going to be about healing. And healing is quite important, relational and physical and spiritual.
All right. Well, that does it for today. So thank you for joining me today, and thank you for tuning in to CBC Rewind, and we'll see you next week.
All right, let's do it.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to email Gary your questions at askgary@cbchighlands.com.